Good evening. My name is DJ Ennis, and welcome to Vote Right for America. In episode 12, I covered legislative powers in Article 1 of the U.S. Constitution, but limited to the first 5 sections of that article. I also proposed a constitutional amendment I called the Coburn Amendment, named after Dr. and Senator Tom Coburn of Oklahoma, which would limit terms for the members of Congress, 3 terms for the House and 2 terms for the Senate. In this episode, I'll cover executive powers. As we discussed in episode 12, the Constitution initially refers to the 3 branches of our federal government, legislative, executive, and judicial, as powers because our founding fathers believed that what they were creating for our new nation was a government that had certain mighty powers but also had restraints on power and a check and balance system which no other nation had before. To take a look at the executive powers in our federal government, we look at Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution. It begins with the words, "The executive power shall be vested in a President of the United States of America." The President's job is to execute, to enforce the laws, to perform or cause to perform the administrative functions of our federal government, much like governors do at the state level. He or she is the Chief Executive Officer or CEO. The Constitution goes on to say how the President is chosen. The exact words are found in Article 2, Section 1, and reads as follows, quote, "Each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors equal to the whole number of senators and representatives to which the state may be entitled in the Congress. But no senator or representative or person holding an office of trust or profit under the United States shall be appointed an elector." Unquote. I had discussed this before in episode 7 where I discussed political party delegates as well as how electors are chosen in each state. We discussed last week that there are 7 states that have only 1 member of the House of Representatives because their population is much lower than most states and have their 2 U.S. senators. For those states, they would only have 3 electoral votes because the number of electors shall be, quote, "equal to the whole number of senators and representatives to which the state may be entitled in the Congress," unquote. Our president is not directly elected to office by a simple majority of votes by the people. Each state decides how the electors are chosen. I pointed out in episode 7 that South Carolina once had it where their state legislature chose the electors. That was before the Civil War. The average person didn't vote for the electors. It was certainly constitutionally defensible. And the South Carolina state legislature changed that later to where voters would vote for the president. But actually, like other states, they're voting for the electors who are committed to cast their ballots on a designated date and time the next month in December at the state capitol for the candidate who got the majority of votes in that state. Since 1972, the state of Maine had legislated a method where the majority of votes are recognized by a congressional district in that state. Whomever the presidential candidate wins within a certain congressional district gets an elector committed to cast his or her ballot for that candidate. Then there are 2 electors committed to cast their ballots for whoever won the majority statewide. In 2016, Maine had 3 electoral votes for Hillary Clinton and 1 electoral vote for Donald Trump because the majority of the people in the 2nd congressional district voted for him. Hillary Clinton won in the 1st congressional district and most of the votes statewide. Nebraska has a similar law on their books. In 2016, Donald Trump won in each congressional district and the statewide vote. Therefore, he received all 5 electoral votes Nebraska had. Some states recently have passed legislation where the state would award the state's electoral votes to the presidential candidate who wins the nationwide popular vote. It is part of a movement called the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. Currently, there are 11 states and the District of Columbia that have this compact in their laws. It would only go into effect if there are 78 electoral votes that could influence the final Electoral College vote total. The states with legislatures stupid enough to pass this tyranny of the majority bill include Colorado, Connecticut, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New Mexico, Oregon, Washington, California, Illinois, and New York, along with the District of Columbia. These are your basic sore loser blue states, the ones that voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016 but didn't see her get the required 270 electoral votes to become president because states like Wisconsin went for Trump when mainstream news media conventional wisdom was that Hillary had that state in the bag. The power to choose the President of the United States is and should continue to be at the state level, just as it is written in the Constitution. Otherwise, California, New York, Illinois, and other crybaby blue states get to bully and corrupt their way to bad government for the rest of us. Most of us realize they don't have great government, not with their egalitarian political economic philosophy-driven nonsense and a style of government that either caters to illegal aliens over citizens, allow people to defecate in public areas without consequences, or throw water on police officers without judicial retribution for their insolence to law enforcement. This is garbage not tolerated anyplace else. So we know that if they don't have sense enough to have good state and local government, we know they have no sense choosing a president. Article 2, Section 2 clarifies that the president is the commander-in-chief of the U.S. military. When the president has called upon the state militia or the National Guard into service for our country, the president is their commander-in-chief as well. Department heads must answer to the president, provide written opinions if necessary for any and all matters pertaining to their duties. The president is their boss. The president has the power to grant sentence reductions and pardons to people convicted for offenses against the United States. The president has the power to make treaties, and these treaties become effective with 2/3 of the senators approving. The president can appoint ambassadors, nominate department heads and other officers, appoint justices for the Supreme Court and other federal courts, and make other appointments either with the Senate's approval or as matters allowed by law. And the president can fill certain vacancies when the Senate is in recess for a limited period. This brings me to Article 2, Section 3, which further explains the president's role. The president provides a State of the Union address to Congress, information on what the president sees as the condition of the United States. The president recommends measures or new laws for Congress to consider necessary. Under certain extraordinary circumstances, the president can call both houses together or have a session with either one of them and deal with major controversial issues that befall them. The president meets and greets ambassadors and other diplomats. The president commissions all officers of the United States, and this, I think, is a very important duty of the president. The president, quote, shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed, unquote. I believe when it comes to President Donald Trump, he truly takes care to faithfully execute the laws. Since he's had experience leading his companies through all manner of compliance issues, he knows how to get people in his organization to comply with the laws and regulations affecting his businesses. So he knows the importance of the president's job and that enforcing the laws takes top priority. His detractors and other haters disagree, but because they get emotional about Trump, they can't coherently articulate how he's not. Many of his attackers uncritically accept the Hollywood stereotype that wealthy people are mean, corrupt, dishonest, greedy, power-hungry, uncaring, and criminal. You know, like Democrat politicians themselves. Let's contrast and compare Trump to his predecessor, Barack Obama. Did President Obama, quote, take care that the laws be faithfully executed, unquote? He didn't with immigration laws. Democrats related that illegal immigrants or undocumented aliens largely got a pass from his administration. His administration didn't try to enforce all immigration laws that had been legislated. In fact, when it came to illegal immigrants that came into the U.S. as children, the Obama administration created a policy to defer actions on them, to hold back the enforcement of our laws on them. His policy is often referred to as the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA, went above and beyond what was in the law. Instead of working with Congress to change immigration laws to deal with illegal immigrant children and other illegal immigrants, many of whom had begun working and becoming part of society, he just continued his policy outside the bounds of law. Instead of working with Congress to change the laws, he spent his efforts to get the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act of 2010, also known as Obamacare, written up by Senate Democrats and their very partisan legislative aides, and passed into law by party line. After a very clumsy implementation and a costly outcome for many Americans, President Obama spent a lot of time defending his legacy garbage health care law. It was a health care law that cost millions of Americans their insurance policies that were specifically tailored to their families' needs only because certain features didn't meet the one-size-fits-all mentality that was behind Obamacare. Insurance premiums ramped up. Cost of health care went up. There was an excise tax placed on the purchase of new medical equipment. The added regulations on an already heavily regulated healthcare industry only slowed the delivery of healthcare. Treaties and trade agreements during the Obama administration were negotiated from the position of appeasement, not strength. And we all suffered for that in our economy, which President Obama stated that a 2% GDP growth rate was going to be the new normal. With Trump in office, trade agreements were renegotiated. The United States withdrew from agreements that weren't ratified by the Senate and weren't really in the best interest of the United States, like the Iran nuclear deal and the Paris Agreement on climate change. President Trump managed to remove job-killing regulations that Obama had put in place and worked to get the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act passed that further reinvigorated the economy. As I pointed out in episode 12, the House Democrats have been trying to find ways to impeach the president. This brings up Article 2, Section 4, which I had referred to in episode 12. Quote, "The President, Vice President, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors." Unquote. As I pointed out in episode 12, there are federal statutes for treason and bribery. The House Democrats couldn't find a basis for those crimes. Their articles of impeachments were for abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. It's not much in terms of federal statutes dealing with those impeachments. So they had a weak case. It was wordy, but weak. President Trump has proven to me that we are fortunate for having him in this executive office, especially during this COVID-19 situation. Early on, he reached out and partnered business leaders with the government to develop means for testing and treatment. He restricted travel from China on January 31st, when most observers thought he was overreacting. He was accused of being xenophobic. He's had the best immunologists involved and held daily or periodic press conferences, some of which a few members of the press tried to score political points for the left. Overall, President Trump is a good executive, a good president. And libtards are still hateful and mean-spirited. And where's the presumptive Democratic Party presidential nominee Joe Biden in all of this? At home, occasionally broadcasting from his basement, a habitation familiar to many who profess they're democratic socialists. You're watching Vote Right for America. Please subscribe to this vlog. It's free, and you can also email me with your comments and questions at vrfa.djennis@gmail.com. And please comment. I'll use your comments and questions to clear up matters or concerns you have in future episodes. Good evening.